50 years ago, Brian Jackson and Dennis Marsden wrote in Education and the Working Class that our education system was based on the principle of selecting and rejecting in order to rear an elite. It still is. This hyper-competitive, hierarchical ethos results in a damaging and dangerous neglect of the education of those the system rejects. It allows a focus on hothousing the privileged few at the expense of realising the educational potential of the many. And this is why we have the largest social class gap in educational attainment in a recent international league table, with less than 3% of low-income English children achieving high educational levels. We have never had an education system that works and attempts to educate all children. Instead, we have three, not one, educational system. There's an elite, fast-track, lavishly funded private education system for the wealthy. And then our increasingly class-segregated state system is not one, but two systems. There's a better-funded group of schools at or near the top of local authority league tables, attended predominantly by white middle-class children. Processes of parental choice and residential segregation enable white middle-class parents to concentrate on realising the educational potential of their children by ensuring that they're mainly educated in these schools or else in predominantly middle-class top sets and streams in more socially diverse schools. And then there is underfunded, under-resourced education, often delivered by our most inexperienced teachers in predominantly working class, often ethnically diverse schools, for the large number of working class children and young people who are failed by our system. This is not just about structures, it's about what those structures represent and the values that underpin them. This tripart system is a consequence of our elite's insistence on segregated, privileged education to guarantee their social and economic reproductions. The top private schools enable the elite to be brought up in isolation from the rest of society, insulated from difference and diversity, and bolstered by an ethos of effortless superiority, which means many end up buying into the belief that they are intellectually and culturally superior to those with less privileged education. Yet education should be a democratic right and an entitlement for all, not an advantage to be monopolised by the wealthy. Now, in the 21st century, the time has surely come for the country as a whole to make a decision about how we achieve an educational system that works for everybody, not just the privileged few. This is a time when we desperately need an educational system that breaks down barriers between social groups and is in all citizens' interests. We have never had that. And this is not just about dismantling an elitist education system, but centrally about replacing an outmoded, divisive set of values that have pervaded our society for far too long. The divisions that our current educational system generate contribute to a destabilised, fragmented society. And private schools are central to this divisiveness. They work against openness in society and sanction and reinforce hierarchy. By operating as a separate elite bubble, they have a powerful impact on the rest of our educational system and British society more widely. They reinforce a culture of knowing your place, of deference and intellectual inferiority in too many of the 93% who go to state schools. The common sense in UK society is that private schools provide a better education than the state sector. But OECD research shows that when children's homes have equivalent levels of resources, children in state schools outperform their private sector counterparts by 20 score points in the PISA reading test. And the OECD also found that countries with sizable private sectors do not do better in any of the PISA tests. We must abolish private schools rather than just reform them, because they perpetuate segregation and elitism in society. I suggest that we follow Finland's example and adopt the universal principle that all education should be free. In the 1960s, the Finnish political leadership, and they actually had a conservative government at the time, decided that their segregated system of education was working against a sense of unity, common goals and social cohesion in society. So they established a common school system in which all schooling was free of charge. There's now a small number of Montessori and Steiner schools, but nothing that threatens their common national policy of the common school. And if we adopted Finland's policy on private schools, then they would no longer be able to charge fees, and the vast majority would be absorbed into a free state system. But we also require radical reform of our state school system, which tries to model itself on the private sector with only a fraction of its resources. And here it would help if we had comprehensive schools that were truly comprehensive. We need socially mixed schools in which different classes and races actually mix. As the philosopher R.H. Tawney said, every parent should want for all children what they want for their own child. Private schools epitomise individualism, competitiveness and self-interest in society, when in the 2020s we will need to work collectively to build shared goals, social cohesion and a sense of trust, value and respect across social differences. Our education system will never be one worthy of a civilised society until the children of all classes and all ethnicities attend the same schools. The abolition of private schools is an essential first step in achieving this. I've finished.